ever walked away from a conversation and thought, was that just friendly, or was there something more there? You replay the eye contact, the way her voice softened for half a second, the way she stood just a little closer than necessary. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, but something felt different, something subtle. Here's where it gets interesting. Attraction rarely announces itself loudly, especially not in emotionally intelligent women, especially not in situations where there are social boundaries, reputations, or internal conflicts involved. Attraction often hides behind composure. It slips through micro-expressions. It reveals itself in patterns, not grand gestures. And most people miss it. Not because it isn't there, but because they're looking for fireworks instead of signals. Today we're breaking down 5 subtle signs she's into you. Not obvious flirting. Not exaggerated behavior. Subtle psychological indicators. The kind that show up in the quiet moments. The kind that tell you more about what she feels than what she says. But before we go deeper, we need to frame this correctly. This conversation is not about manipulation. It is not about crossing boundaries. It is not about pursuing someone who is unavailable or committed elsewhere. Attraction is human. Awareness is maturity. Understanding psychology is about clarity, not conquest. When you understand subtle signals, you move with respect. You read the room. You honor boundaries. You protect your own dignity. That's power, not pressure, not persuasion. Now let's go deeper. Attraction is rarely just about physical appeal. It's about emotional resonance, validation, novelty, safety, ego reinforcement, sometimes even loneliness, sometimes the simple thrill of feeling seen. Have you ever noticed how someone can seem completely composed on the outside, yet their body language betrays a deeper emotional undercurrent? That's because attraction operates beneath conscious control. The nervous system responds before the mind rationalizes. Pupils dilate, breathing shifts, voice tone changes, proximity narrows. These are not rehearsed behaviors, they are biological responses filtered through social restraint. And this is subtle, but powerful. Sign number 1 is micro-investment in conversation. When a woman is simply being polite, her responses are adequate, functional, socially appropriate. But when she's into you, even slightly, her investment changes. Pay attention to how she listens. Does she ask follow-up questions that go beyond surface-level curiosity? Does she circle back to something you mentioned earlier, showing she remembered it? Does she lean in? Not dramatically, but just enough to signal attentiveness. Here's what most people get wrong. They think attraction shows up as big laughter or obvious compliments. But subtle attraction often shows up as focused attention. Attention is emotional currency. When she reallocates more of it to you than necessary, that's not accidental. That's selective investment. You might notice she maintains eye contact half a second longer than socially required. Not staring, just enough to create a moment. And in that half second, there's something unspoken, a pause, a silent acknowledgement. And here's where psychology deepens. When someone is attracted, their brain releases dopamine in anticipation, not just reward. That anticipation heightens focus. You become more interesting than you objectively are. That's neurochemistry. If she consistently seeks you out in group settings, angles her body toward you, mirrors your gestures, or subtly adjusts her posture when you enter the space, these are unconscious alignment behaviors. Alignment signals interest, but don't mistake politeness for pursuit. The pattern is what matters. One moment means nothing. Repetition means something. Sign number 2 is emotional contrast. Watch how she behaves with others versus how she behaves with you. Does her tone soften? Does her sarcasm fade? Does she become slightly more vulnerable? Maybe she shares something personal that she doesn't openly discuss with the group. This is subtle, but powerful. Vulnerability is not given randomly. It is selectively granted where emotional safety exists. Have you ever noticed someone who seems confident and composed around everyone else, but around one person, there's a slight nervous energy, a tiny hesitation before speaking, a small breath before responding? That nervous system shift reveals internal stakes. When she cares about your perception, she self-monitors more. She becomes aware of how she's coming across. That heightened awareness is attraction mixed with self-protection. Sign number 3 is playful tension, not obvious flirting, not exaggerated teasing, but subtle challenge. She might disagree with you lightly, she might test your perspective, She might smile while questioning you. There's a spark underneath the interaction. Here's why. Attraction thrives on emotional movement. Static conversations feel safe, but dull. Playful tension creates polarity. It creates dynamic energy. It gives her a reason to stay engaged. But this is where most people get it wrong. They assume teasing equals attraction. It doesn't. The key is warmth beneath it. If there's a smile in her eyes, if her tone carries softness even when her words challenge you, if she holds the moment instead of exiting it quickly, the energy lingers. And lingering energy is rarely accidental. Sign number 4 is protective awareness. This one is subtle and often overlooked. When someone is attracted, they become aware of your presence and social shifts. If someone else gives you attention, does she notice? If another woman enters the conversation and engages you, does her posture change? Not dramatically, just slightly. Maybe she becomes quieter. Maybe she re-engages more intensely. Maybe she touches her hair or adjusts her clothing unconsciously. These are self-presentation shifts. Attraction activates comparison instincts. Not because she's insecure, but because the brain registers potential competition. Pay attention to how quickly she recalibrates when social dynamics shift. That recalibration reveals emotional investment. Sign number 5 is delayed detachment. When the conversation ends, does she leave immediately, or does she hover for half a second longer? Does she find one more small comment to extend the interaction? That final moment is telling. Humans instinctively stretch experiences they enjoy, even subconsciously. Maybe she sends a follow-up text, referencing something small you said. Maybe she reacts to your stories slightly more consistently than others. Maybe she initiates contact in low-risk ways. Not dramatic invitations, just subtle pings of connection. These micro-extensions reveal desire to maintain thread continuity. But here's where it becomes layered. Attraction is rarely clean. Sometimes she will pull back. Sometimes she will go quiet. Sometimes she will act distant after a moment of closeness. Why? Fear of vulnerability. Fear of misinterpretation. Fear of social consequences. Fear of rejection. Push-pull dynamics are not games. They are emotional regulation attempts. If she feels something unexpected, she may create distance to regain control. That hot-cold shift isn't always manipulation. Sometimes it's internal conflict. Desire versus logic. Emotion versus circumstance. Especially if there are boundaries involved. Relationships, social dynamics, professional environments. This is why situational contrast matters. Observe her in public versus private settings. Does she act neutral in group environments, but warmer one-on-one? That's often social preservation. She protects image while allowing connection in safer spaces. Notice texting patterns versus in-person behavior. Some people express attraction more freely digitally because it feels lower risk. Others do the opposite. When others enter the room, does her body subtly reposition away from you or closer to you? Does conversation energy shift? And here's something most people overlook. Sudden emotional withdrawal after a strong connection moment is often a sign the moment meant something. If it didn't matter, there would be no need to regulate it. But none of this overrides integrity. Attraction does not equal entitlement. If she is committed elsewhere, your role is awareness, not pursuit. If she signals mixed energy, you respect ambiguity instead of forcing clarity. Emotional maturity means you never push someone to act against their values or circumstances. Understanding subtle signs is about reading reality accurately, not inventing it, not projecting fantasy onto friendliness. The most powerful position you can hold is self-respect. You observe. You remain grounded. You do not chase signals. You reciprocate clarity. Because here's the truth. When attraction is mutual and healthy, it does not require decoding forever. Subtle signs eventually become clearer behavior. Investment increases, initiative balances, energy stabilizes. If it stays confusing indefinitely, that confusion is information. Have you ever noticed how the right dynamic feels calm underneath the tension? There's spark, but there's also ease. That's alignment. These 5 subtle signs are not guarantees. They are patterns, signals, emotional footprints. Micro-investment in conversation. Emotional contrast. Playful tension with warmth. Protective awareness in shifting dynamics. Delayed detachment and thread extension. Pay attention to the pattern, not the moment. And most importantly, pay attention to yourself. Are you grounded? Are you interpreting from clarity or from hope? Are you respecting boundaries, including your own? Psychological awareness is power when it's paired with integrity. Attraction is beautiful when it's mutual, respectful, and free of pressure.